It says, Mom, I took off for a little while. I'm in good hands, I promise. Be back shortly. Please don't worry. No need to. Call if you need me. Love you, Chan. That's the note I found when I come home that evening. I want answers for Chandice. I need them for Chandice. I'm doing this mainly, for myself, but for Chandice. Chandice deserves it. I need to know.
Could you put yourself in that mother's shoes for a few moments and just imagine the last words you have from your missing daughter are a letter left at home saying, I'll be fine, I'll be back. And that's it. She doesn't take clothes to be out for an extended period of time. She doesn't take any of her personal important items with her. By all signs, this girl was supposed to be coming home, but we're now coming up on almost 5 years of her missing. Thankfully, there's been some developments over this past week that might be showing there's some progress happening in this case, but there's also something that some people might look at and say is a major setback that could be coming up later this year. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Chandice Rebecca Cochran. Welcome back to Brain Scratch Searchlight. I'm John Lordan. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today and for caring about these cases like I do. Together we can do amazing things. One of those things is showing the family of Chandice that they've got a group of supporters out here talking about this case, trying to raise exposure as we come up on the 5-year mark of Chandice missing. Before we dive into all the details, just a quick reminder, if you were missing the Wednesday shows that we used to have here on the channel, you can still catch them. You just need to subscribe to LordanArts Studio 2. There's a link popping up here that you could do it with, or in the description box down below, you'll find a link down there as well. Subscribe to LordanArts Studio 2, get those Wednesday shows back. Let's continue and learn about Chandice Cochran. And this is a tough case because very early on, there's a person of interest. And when there's a person of interest, especially if it's one of the people last seen with her, and we don't get very compelling information about what happened, it leaves a lot of suspicion going in that direction. We do have those conditions with this case, but let's go ahead and stop at Namus and just get the basics of Chandice Rebecca Cochran, a white Caucasian female. Date of last contact, August 20th, 2019. She's missing from Sutton, West Virginia, and Sutton is where her mother and Candace lived. It's a town in Braxton County, West Virginia. Population only 876 as of the 2020 census, so pretty much a rural area. It is the county seat of Braxton County. Sutton is situated at a center of transportation in West Virginia. You've got Interstate 79, which is a major north-south route, and that connects with the Appalachian Corridor L, US Route 19, another significant north-south route, and that passes several miles south of town. Route 19 actually going to come up in this. But also, whenever we're talking about a missing persons investigation, just knowing that this is kind of the center of a cross of major transportation here might be a factor in cases like this when we have someone go missing. Even if they go missing of their own accord, that could be how they get out of town. So I just wanted to note that kind of major intersection that goes on through here. Back to the basics. She went missing at the age of 28. She would currently be 33 years old. She stands at 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighs around 110 pounds. For the circumstances of disappearance, Chandice was living with her mother at the time of her disappearance. Her mother went to work on August 20th, and upon her return, Chandice was nowhere to be found. All of her belongings were left at home. Chandice has a tattoo on her right leg reading, "See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil." She also has a tendency to dye her hair, so her hair color may have changed. And of course, her looks change pretty significantly with those hair color changes. We'll look at some photos here, and we'll have some scrolling down below so you guys can get a good look at that. Her natural hair color is brown. Once again, it's just noting she dyes her hair frequently. She has blue eyes, and of course that tattoo that was mentioned. We don't have a clothing description, which I've already told you guys. We've got someone that is with her at the last time she's seen. Why don't we have a clothing description here? I think is a little bit of an indicator in terms of how they might be actually cooperating with this investigation. Really no other additional case information here. We have a couple of photos, and one in particular, we can see that the tattoo is kind of rolls up on, this should be her right hip. And it is a cluster of a couple of skulls. It looks like some of the shading is done on it, but not all of it. Some of it is still in outline. And around here somewhere, it's hard to see because this picture is very pixelated, but that phrase is tattooed around here. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And here we have another picture of Chandice. Also worth noting, depending on the publications that you go to, the spelling of her name changes. Some of the earlier news broadcasts were calling her Candace. Chandice is what her mother calls her, so I'm assuming if that's correct. And I believe that this is the correct spelling that we have here at the Charlie Project. And I just wanted to stop here so you can see this cluster of photos and note just she has such a different look when she does color her hair. So that is possibly a factor in this case, though we do have a person of interest that we're going to be talking about here as well, and some suspicion of foul play around that. But let's go ahead and start with the basics over at WOWKTV.com. This is from September 10th, 2019. The West Virginia State Police is seeking assistance in locating a missing person. Chandice Rebecca Cochran, 28, was last seen near Birch River, Nicholas County, West Virginia. So there we're getting a different location than we heard over at Namus. Birch County, or Birch River in particular, is a census-designated place in northern Nicholas County, West Virginia. The community is situated in the valley of the Birch River, and it's the location of the western terminus of West Virginia Route 82 at U.S. Route 19. There's 19 again. As of the 2010 census, its population only 107. Now, I have family that grew up in kind of smaller communities like this. And one thing you know about these smaller communities is the rumor mill is usually extremely strong. I mean, across both of these towns that we've talked about, we're not even talking 1,000 people max. So it's one of those situations where if someone knows something, there's a very good chance that someone else is going to have heard some piece of that or know parts of that as well. Unless the person that knows something just isn't talking to anyone, which I assume does happen in some cases, but is exceptionally rare. Pretty strange to me that we're now talking about this case over 4 years later. And quite honestly, law enforcement is still putting out the word that they're looking for the person that has the information to talk. And they do think that that person is out there. So we're talking a small community here. It might be one of those things where some of these community members might need to ask someone, hey, you were friends with this person at that time. Like, did you hear anything about this? Maybe raising the exposure, getting some people talking about this might help maybe nudge that person to pick up the phone and to call it in. Or it could be that one of these community members even hears the piece of information now, as there's kind of a new run of press happening around this with the developments of last week. So I think it's really important that people are aware of the phone number that we're showing on the screen here. And hopefully there's some more conversation happening around this with this case that could be helpful to her mother, to her father. But let's go ahead and continue here. So the date of last contact we saw at Namus was August 20th. And here it's being reported that she was reported missing by her mother on August 20th. I don't think that's accurate. I think her mother waited for a period of time before reporting her missing, but August 20th is kind of the key date in terms of anyone that thinks they might have witnessed something around this. Troopers also said that Cochran's mother said she feared for her daughter's safety because she was involved with drugs and dangerous people. So her mother, aware of some serious risk factors there, and, finding that letter at home, especially with it talking about her being with someone safe, sounds like there was probably some conversations that had happened between these two in the past, and she was trying to make sure that her mother wouldn't be concerned with her being gone. Of course, she doesn't come back from that. So was she really with someone safe is certainly a big question. I just want to roll back into her backstory a little bit, because I know a lot of people, when we're talking about these missing persons cases and you hear about someone being kind of in the wrong crowd or potentially using drugs, some people decide to take what I call the emotional off-ramp at that point and try to distance their own heart from like, oh, we can't care about people like that. We can and we should, because her disappearance is extremely important to her family, her circle of friends. There are so many people that are impacted by that, and she's important. It's something that we just got to keep in mind. Yes, people struggle from time to time. Sometimes we're going to find ourselves doing things that aren't the best for ourselves and the people that we love. That doesn't mean that we should just be written off and that's that. And no one would come looking for us if we go missing. So just to roll back the clock a little bit, Chandice had a picture-perfect childhood growing up in Braxton County. The athletic and popular teen had a big group of friends and an unbreakable bond with her older brother, Bert. And here is a picture of both of them. I believe he's named after their father. They said, "You made our life a fairy tale," and it was. It was perfect, her mother Becky recalled. But addiction doesn't care about a fairy tale. Bert was found dead on Father's Day in 2010. He was only 21 years old. Now, I don't know what the actual cause of death with Bert was. The way that this is phrased in this article, and I've heard other people that have used this article for podcasts and things like that, they kind of club these two phrases together, and I don't know if it's really talking about that Bert possibly died of an overdose. Regardless, one way or another, these siblings were very, very close to each other, and his passing was very hard for Chandice to deal with. When we lost him, she said, "I just can't imagine life without him, Mom. I can't do this. I just can't do it." Bert's death was the beginning of a troubled path for Chandice. She was prescribed pain pills following an emergency surgery shortly after he died, which eventually led to a heroin addiction that stole her away from the mother who never stopped trying to get her back. "People have no idea unless they live it," Becky would say. 2 weeks before Chandice disappeared, Becky saw the change for which she had been praying. Chandice was fighting hard to stay clean and turn her life around after nearly 10 painful years of addiction. I could see that she had gotten her will back to live and she was doing great. Her friends all said that. They said she was better off than they had seen her since she lost her brother, her mother said. On August 20th, 2019, Becky came home and found that note. It still sits on her kitchen counter. So person of interest, you might have caught a picture of this person in some of the other earlier news articles on this. We have a man that is being featured in these photos with her. His name is Christopher Spees, 37 years old, of Lynn. In a multi-county effort, Lewis County Sheriff's deputies found a vehicle known to be driven by Spees, and Sergeant Hiddleston with the Braxton County Detachment of the West Virginia State Police took him into custody without incident. Chandice Cochran is still considered to be missing. So this is the person she was last known to be with. And some people think this is the person that is holding back on information about what happened to her. State police continue to search. September 2019, West Virginia state troopers are conducting their 6th search in a rugged area of Nicholas County. Troopers, deputies, and natural resources police focused their efforts in the rugged area around a gravel parking lot near US 19 in Birch River. Let's jump over to the map real quick and get a look. So based on some of the descriptions I've been hearing, they went, Spees and Chandice were out in this area at a home out here. And based on that description, I'm hearing that they walked away from the home towards the fire department. And we have the fire department down here. These searches are happening around what's being described as a gravel parking lot. And I believe it might be this one here. It's kind of hard to know for sure because there's a few areas like this around out here, but I'm just kind of winging it together based on the descriptions that I heard about this night. And we're talking late, somewhere around midnight, 1 a.m., when they supposedly go walking away from this house and kind of come through this parking lot. So a lot of the search efforts seem to be focused around here. However, I mean, look at this area, guys. This is, I mean, there's just woods and woods and woods, and there is a ton of open land around here. The terrain has made for a difficult search. So on top of this being a massive area, it's also difficult terrain on top of that. But couple that up with the fact that the 28-year-old woman's mother didn't report her missing until September 1st. So we're about 10 days behind in terms of searching for her as well. Her last known location remains that gravel parking lot in Birch River. So I believe that they have a cell phone trace that has happened on her phone to this area. I haven't heard anything about Christopher Spees' cell phone being traced or what that might show as well. If he does have one, I would assume the two of them were walking together. And at a minimum, even if they don't have GPS, I mean, this is kind of a rural area. They should at least be able to ping off of cell towers, and the triangulation of the cell towers should be decent enough to say, okay, they're in the same general area. But even knowing that they get to this point and somewhere around 1 a.m., her phone signal just stops. I mean, is it possible the battery died? Sure, but it's kind of strange. Someone will go walking off in the middle of the night like that and power down their phone, just like, oh, I'm going to shut my phone down. So it already seems suspicious. Speaking of suspicious, what about Christopher Spees? What does he say around this? What is he telling law enforcement? Does law enforcement believe him? Well, you can see the highlight here, but let's go ahead and hear a clip from law enforcement about some issues that they're having with his information.
Right now, it's still a missing persons investigation, but we have nailed down that he has not been truthful, and we've proved that he has not been truthful with us. So he's still a primary person of interest in this missing persons case.
So they're being very upfront with the fact that he's not being truthful. Now, yes, he's a person of interest. They could bring him in for questioning, but how long would they be able to hold him? Only a matter of a few days if that was the case. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, I don't know. This guy has other charges. He has active warrants, so they're able to process him for those and essentially kind of keep him in custody, I think, from this point forward. He is, as of the recording of this episode, he is actually still in jail. We'll talk more about those charges as we go forward. But law enforcement being very clear right from the jump, we know that he's not being honest with us about some stuff. And admittedly, yes, we know that drugs is a significant factor in this case. What can that do to someone's memory if you're a habitual user? Is that being combined with alcohol abuse and some things like that? We know that people do get to the point of blacking out occasionally. That does happen. Is that what's happening in this case? There's no way for us to know. But it seems to me that law enforcement is saying, hey, look, no, we know he's really not being honest with us. I think that's a bit different than them coming out and saying, he doesn't seem to remember, which interestingly, with some other law enforcement that's working on this case, that's kind of the message that they're going to be bringing to us as we hit some of the more current information. But let's go ahead and continue here. And we get to the 3-year mark. Mother desperate to find her missing daughter after years-long search. Becky Cochran hasn't slept through the night for 3 years. How do you go to bed when your child is missing? She said. It just feels like this is hell right here on Earth. Really, really tough. A man named Christopher Spees. Also, when I first saw this picture, I went back and I checked some of the other photos. I'm like, this doesn't look like the same guy. This is the same guy. I believe because he's been in jail for a period of years at this point, effectively, he's had to clean up. And obviously, he's put some weight on. But what also threw me was his hair. He has more hair now than he did before, which I suppose could be some side effect of severe drug use. But a man named Christopher Spees, who was from Gilmer County, picked Chandice up that afternoon from her mother's home in Sutton. They went to the Birch River area of Nicholas County. Trooper said they believe that they were selling drugs. Trooper said Chandice knew people in the Birch River area, but Spees didn't have a lot of connections there. The two ended up at the home of a man named Sam Kelly. So that's the home that I mentioned earlier. That's kind of near where that gravel parking lot is. That is where the truth about what happened next falls apart. Here is Senior Trooper Caleb Harper. He's the one that actually has a little different perspective, and he's been dealing with Spees quite a bit over these few years. That was around midnight. They were there for a while. They decided it was time to leave, said Senior Trooper Caleb Harper. The gentleman, he's talking about Kelly, went to Go Mart to get some cigarettes with his girlfriend. When they came back, they actually see Mr. Spies and Chandice leaving the residence on foot, headed towards the fire department. And that's the last that they saw them. From Mr. Spies' memory, that he can kind of put her in a general area. So it seems like, and this is kind of what's strange to me, we basically have Kelly saying, okay, I saw them, they were going in this direction, and I saw them around this particular area. Then it sounds like they're trying to validate that with Spies, with Christopher Spies, and he's basically saying, oh yeah, no, that's what I remember too, but I don't remember past that. And that is always suspicious to me. I'm sure some of you out there have had someone lie to you at some point in your life, and you've been able to catch them in it. And if you do, it's kind of a normal thing that you will only ever be able to hold them to what you could prove about their lie. Like in many, many cases, they just won't admit anything outside the confines of what they have to. And that's what worries me about this comment in particular. We basically have law enforcement saying, look, we've got this witness that says you guys were in this area. Oh yeah, yep, that's where we were. Okay, well, where were you after that? I just can't remember. Does that seem suspicious to you guys? The central question remains, what happened once they left Kelly's house? Around 7 a.m. the following day, Spies was picked up walking along Wydendilly Road a few miles from Birch River. It was Kelly who picked him up. Kelly told investigators he had happened to spot Spies as he was on his way to work, and he offered to give him a ride. Spies was alone. There was no sign of Chandice. So that's another interesting thing, because they're at this guy's house the night before. The next morning, he's driving out at 7 a.m. He spots one of them. He doesn't spot the other. Tell me that he didn't ask Christopher where she is. There had to be some conversation around that. Now, I'm not saying that Kelly got the right information or the truth or even any explanation, but I'm sure there was at least a question if what we're being told here is actually accurate. I mean, to me, it's also kind of interesting that, hey, didn't I see you last night? Like the first person to see Christopher on both sides of the event of Chandice disappearing is the same guy. Does anyone else think that there might be some suspicion around that? Like, it's just, admittedly, keep in mind, we're talking very rural area, not a lot of people out there. So, the chance of someone running into someone 2 times within a 12-hour period, not incredibly out of the realm, right? Like it's certainly a possibility. But if that's the case, there had to be some conversation there. So it's just, did Kelly have information that could help the investigation? We don't know. I'm not getting any gist in terms of how helpful Kelly was to investigators, but investigators also aren't coming out and saying he wasn't helpful to them as well. But man, this already doesn't feel good when we've got these kind of conditions. And now we've got someone that's the closest thing to a witness. The same person saw them before and after. I would think this guy has some key information about this, especially if he had any type of decent relationship with Spies. But what we are hearing from law enforcement is maybe that wasn't the case. Chandice is the one that knew people in this area. If that's the case, then you'd have to wonder, well, why would Kelly have picked him up then? Why would he have picked up Spies? Like if he was just a guy that Chandice brought over the night before, if he was a guy that was bringing drugs or something like that, you saw him the next morning, would that be enough for you to pull over and kind of offer him a ride, take him somewhere? Just a lot of questions around the interpersonal dynamics here. And I do think this is one of those cases. The interpersonal dynamics are going to be very, very important to solving it. According to Mr. Spies and what evidence I've been able to gather from her cell phone records, it does appear that her cell phone died sometime around midnight or sometime after, and it was never powered back on, Harper said. So there's the confirmation on the phone. Spies was interviewed several times by West Virginia State Police troopers. Becky, Chandice's mother, was even there for one of those talks. She said that it's something she said Spies said that still haunts her. When he got up to leave the room, I said, Spies, just tell me, is Chandice with us or not? And he said, not. That's all he said, and he just walked away real quick. Harper said Spies has cooperated with him and they have done interviews together. It's a really hard question to answer whether he's being deceitful or he's trying to hide something, but it's my opinion in talking to him that he does appear to be genuine in trying to help, Harper says. That is just such a different statement from the law enforcement officer in that last clip that we watched. Like, that guy was basically saying, we know he's lying to us. Like, we've confirmed he's lying to us about some fact around this. Now we have this law enforcement officer, Harper, saying, I think this guy's trying to be helpful. As a matter of fact, he has taken Spies out to that site in some attempt to like jog his memory. It hasn't really helped, but we spent several days together, either talking or me driving him to Birch River to let him look at things and try to jog his memory. He can walk you up until 1, 2 o'clock, and he can remember being picked up the next morning. The time in between is something he tells us he can't recall, Harper said. That is a big, big block of time. And just, it's troublingly convenient to me. I just can't remember. Basically, he's saying anything where you guys can't prove where I was based on information from somewhere else, I can't remember. I know they have Kelly saying, I saw them at 1 o'clock in the morning. They were in this area. I saw him at 7 a.m. the next morning. He got in my truck. This is really, really troubling. Chandice's phone has never been found. A local resident did find her change purse with her ID in the woods near Birch River not long after she disappeared. So we have another personal item of hers found in that area by a local resident. And here we have a picture of her mother trying to raise exposure. Please help us find Chandice. Thankfully, she's got some people out there helping her with that effort. And I believe this is something that she's done for several years at this point. Harper said state police need to solve the case. We're looking for someone to come and tell us information that we don't know about the 1 o'clock morning hours until daylight. There's something that most likely happened in that time period that we can't account for, that we don't have witnesses for, and it's my opinion that there's folks out there who are probably sitting on that information who maybe hope that one day someone else comes and tells that story or the information gets out some other way. Harper says, without them coming forward and telling us that story, we may never know. So this is where I think the social aspect is important. This is a small town. People are going to be talking to each other about this case. And maybe some of those conversations can prod that person that has that information. Now certainly seems to be like a good time for it, especially with some of the developments that we're seeing on this case. Also, I just want to give a quick shout out to the reporter that worked. It was Leslie Rubin that pulled this report together. And quite honestly, this report is probably the most comprehensive in this case. Leslie did a great job. Leslie also reached out directly to Spies, asking for his information. And Spies actually wrote back from within prison. Mrs. Rubin, I would love for Chandice to be found so it would clear my name. I've sat down with investigators countless times going over the events of that night. Chandice and I was partying, been up a few days on meth and Xanax. So my memory was like one of them picture books that you flip through really fast, like frame by frame. I've even sat down with her mom and dad and answered all their questions. I didn't do anything to Chandice, and I don't know where she is at. I took the state cops to where I was last with her, and they said they searched that area really good and she wasn't there. I feel so bad for her parents. I wish there was something more that I could do. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to explain. My lawyer told me not to write this, but I got nothing to hide. Maybe this way, if this story goes on the news, you won't make it sound like I've been found guilty for this. I know I'm an easy target, but I didn't do anything to Chandice. I hope and pray they find her. Thank you for your time. P.S. I have 3 kids of my own, so please watch what you say about me on the news. Thank you. Sincerely, Christopher Spies. It is worth saying he has not been found guilty about anything related to Chandice. He does have other charges, One of those is failing to register as a sex offender for something that happened, I believe it was back in 2001. So he's been evading, and he was supposed to register, I guess, in 2 separate counties. He must have resided in those 2 counties at some point, and he never did. So that's part of the charges that have basically put him in jail for the period of time that he is now. In regards to this case, it is worth noting, yes, there is a possibility that she left him. Maybe he passed out, she went walking out to the road, someone picked her up, and something happened from there. There is certainly another possibility in this case. It would be different to me if he actually had some recollection of something like that. Oh, we were arguing. That's part of why we left Kelly's house. And then, we had this big fight. She went walking off through the woods, and that's about it. And it's interesting because I'm seeing some references, and it's mostly in places. There's a change.org petition. There was a GoFundMe, but I don't know if it's still active. But I've kind of seen that there's been some comments where the family has come to understand that at one point Spies said that he watched her go running off into the woods. I don't know more about that story. I can't find like the original version of that story. But I have found other places where it says that his story has kind of changed a little bit in terms of his last interactions with her. But do I think he's being honest about the drug use? I think that totally makes sense. Of course, it is another one of those things that there's other witnesses. We've got other people that were with them that night that could certainly validate if that was happening or not. And I don't know, guys. It's just, I get this feeling that he's only admitting to things where he knows there's other people that can prove what he was doing. And that is really, really troubling because we've got a 6-hour window here. That is a crazy big window. We have someone that is involved. I believe he's had some trafficking related charges as well. So this is someone that could be dealing drugs. We know that law enforcement thought they were dealing drugs on this night. That is its own currency. That's its own circle of people and resources. Did he call up someone? Did he ask for a ride from someone? All of that is possible. Of course, all of those touches put other things into play. If someone did go and pick him up, all of a sudden, there's maybe another cell phone record out there that could validate that. Maybe there's a spouse that noticed their spouse leaving in the middle of the night. There's other touch points when other people get involved. So are we looking at that with this case? I think that's what law enforcement's hoping for, that there's some type of interaction. And with the developments happening this week, there's a possible sign that maybe that's exactly what they're tapping into at this point. But let's go ahead and continue with the articles here. So I did want to understand the charges a little bit more. And I kind of wanted to know if he had any charges specifically for being violent. And I came across this article from May of 2016. So this is about Spies, charged with felony possession with intent to deliver methamphetamine. So clearly dealing there. He was also charged with assault on a police officer, escape, prohibited person in possession of a firearm, 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance, and 1 count of driving on a license revoked for DUI, according to Lewis Sheriff Adam Gissy. Deputies responding to a suspicious activity complaint around 2 a.m. said that they found Spies passed out behind the wheel of a vehicle, the engine still running. Spies became combative and fled from the deputies. Deputies also found him in possession of meth as well as prescription drugs, and a gun was inside the vehicle, the sheriff alleged. So that is the charges that we're looking at previously that involve some form of violence. I haven't found a whole lot more outside of that. But in terms of him kind of having a thing with cops, this is a picture of a tattoo. I believe that's on his back. This is right from his Facebook, and he uses this as part of the banner at the top. And this image, at least to me, looks like a police officer that has been blindfolded and gagged, is in the kneeling position, and is about to be executed. So a propensity for violence. Artwork is artwork. I understand that there's definitely a line between fantasy when it comes to artistic depictions. I understand that. But this is a man that does have charges for assault on a police officer as well. So we do have from this year, we can see that Becky was out there again, but raising awareness for Chandice in a bit of a different way. She was in Birch River celebrating Chandice's 33rd birthday, and that was on April 27th of 2024. We can see a big smile on Becky's face there. It's nice to see that, knowing that this is a woman that hasn't been able to sleep through the night since her daughter went missing. And we get to the updates from this past week. State police execute search warrant. From May 8th, 2024, West Virginia State Police investigators now believe foul play was involved. Troopers executed a search warrant at a home in Wyden-Dilley Road in Clay County in connection with the disappearance of Chandice Cochran. Troopers say that new information has developed over the past year that led to the search warrant. So, good thing on a couple of levels. First of all, to hear that there's new information still coming in on this case, and to hear that that information was strong enough to get a search warrant, to have a judge actually sign off on that, both very good steps. Now, this is actually a bit a ways from that scene in Birch River where her phone shut off. We could see it's about a 7-mile drive. I don't think there is a path that you could walk that would really shorten that up too much. And, walking, could Spees have walked all night and been back in this area to be picked up by that friend of his? He probably could have. It would have been a lot of walking. And even by his own admission, this guy's on Xanax at that point. I don't think that he walked 7 miles in the middle of the night. Also, the potential to be witnessed would have been much higher if he had done that. This is leading me to believe there's some possibility that we've got someone else involved here. First of all, there's this person out here. Whose home is this? We're actually going to touch on that in a moment. But 7 miles away from where her cell phone was, maybe that situation I was talking about, a phone call to some other person. Hey, I need a ride. I need to be picked up. We got to do something about this. Maybe we do have something like that happening in this case. Sergeant Douglas Gordon of the Sutton Detachment has taken over as lead investigator on the case. He says that he and Trooper Logan Cox of the Nicholas County Detachment joined together for the investigation because the last time Chandice was seen was in the Birch River area of Nicholas County. Gordon tells WOWK 13 News that they've been working more on the case in the last couple of years, and it's important to figure out what happened to Cochran. Ms. Cochran's been missing for 5 years now, and we believe foul play was involved. So state police were pretty relentless on investigating criminal matters and missing persons, Gordon said. They've believed this to be the case even from the beginning of the investigation. So pretty clear that now law enforcement's saying, we're officially saying this is a foul play situation now, but we were dealing with that pretty much from the start with that belief. Gordon said that members of the West Virginia State Police Crime Scene Unit searched a home and surrounding property in the 9100 block of Wyden-Dilley Road all day Tuesday, literally 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. They were processing that home. Gordon said evidence recovered was sent to the State Police Crime Lab. So they did recover evidence, but he did also confirm that no remains were found at the property. He did not specify what was recovered. The property belongs to Jonas Schaefer, who Gordon said does not currently reside at the home. He would not comment on Schaefer's connection to the case. So we now have a different name. We know this information is being developed on tips that only came in within the past year. And I'm thinking that this is some big hope for this case, a big boost in the right direction. Gordon said the search of the property in Clay County has concluded, but the case was being actively investigated and foul play was suspected in Cochran's disappearance. We're not going to let this die, Gordon said. Now, just with some extremely simple social media searches, you could very quickly determine that Jonas Schaefer is friends on a social network with Sam Kelly. So there is some connectivity that's going on here. What's interesting is I didn't expect to see that connectivity. I expected to see some other connectivity more with Spies, but I can't see any connectivity between Schaefer and Kelly to Spies, only directly between Jonas Schaefer and Sam Kelly. Spies has been convicted in multiple counties, including Nicholas counties, for grand larceny, attempt to commit grand larceny, and failure to register as a sex offender. And that has kept him in jail for a few years at this point. But I mentioned at the start of this episode that an important event was coming up related to this case. His projected release date, September 8th, 2024. So I believe law enforcement might be making a big push on this case at this point to try to head off that release if they do think that he is still their main person of interest and potentially a suspect in this disappearance. So that is all the publicly available information at this point. I kind of just want to roll through these photos again because he looks considerably different from, I assume, back when he was free to use and using drugs hard. And once again, just note, I'm not sure what the timing of this photo is, but he has very little hair here, full head of hair here. And in the most recent, a full head of hair. And also it looks like he's gained some weight while he's been incarcerated as well. And here's where I put it to you. Are you the person that has the information that can help this investigation at this point? Please call it into West Virginia State Police at 304-765-2101. If you're not that person, but you happen to know anyone in these areas, and I know these are really, really rural areas there, please share this video with them. Let's get them talking about it. I think talking is such an important component of this case. I think, especially with some of those areas, sometimes that could be almost social pressure that helps some of these things bubble to the surface. I've got to think that these people are talking about this case, especially now with that search that has happened out there. But let's keep that chatter going, and let's hope that the person that has that information can really just find it in their heart to call it in and put it in play and give this mother the answers that she's been looking for, as well as Chandice's father. I know there's other family members, there's friends, there's a lot of people looking for justice in this case. They're looking for Chandice primarily, but it seems like we need justice in this case as well. I did find a public group, very well-managed group, seems to be protecting the interests of the family. I'm not sure if the family is directly involved in terms of administering it, but I can tell that their heart's in the right place with it. So I'm going to have a link to this down below if you'd like to follow. They're doing a great job of keeping the latest news postings all coming to this page. So if you want to stay up to date on this case, it's an excellent resource for doing that. It's the Finding Chandice public group. There's a link in the description box down below. Also, her mother's been trying to raise awareness, get more resources to help on this case. It seems like we're on the right track for that. But just in case, why not take a moment, jump on over to the link I have down below, go to change.org, throw another signature in here. Let's get this thing to 2,500 and bump it to that next level and just keep that exposure growing and raising in this case, and give Becky, Bert, and Chandice another chance with all of this. I really appreciate your guys' help on that, and I appreciate you sticking here through this whole video. Before we cut away, just a quick reminder, we always run limited commercials. We always have. We can only do that because of our amazing supporters. A big thank you to PayPal supporters Hillary Green, Amanda Beard, and a special thank you to Karen Homan. Thank you so much for that donation, Karen. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit LordanArts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Tabitha Tyndall recently did. We really appreciate everyone that helps us stay here, helping these families, raising exposure in these cases. We can't do it without you guys. Take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend. And please join us again next week right here on the LordanArts channel.